Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're skipping the archives and jumping straight into a true crime story that honestly sounds completely made up. It's the incredible, really quite paradoxical tale of Jeffrey Manchester. He had this criminal specialty so unique, he got a legendary nickname, the Roofman.
Yeah, it's such a story of contrasts, isn't it? Our sources, they detail this near-perfect criminal technique he had, this hiding spot that seems genuinely impossible, and then ultimately the single very human mistake that just brought his whole life on the run crashing down.
Right, and that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack the life, the crimes, and the dramatic downfall of Jeff Manchester. We'll show you exactly how this master burglar who could literally hide in plain sight for months ended up caught, and all because of a simple lie about a work schedule.
And to really get that fall, you first have to grasp the scale of his success beforehand. What really cemented that nickname, the Roofman, and his notoriety was this incredibly specific crime spree. He broke into 45 different McDonald's restaurants, always the same way, through the roof.
Okay, let's dig into that. 45 times. That's section 1. The making of the Roofman. 45 identical crimes. That's not just volume, is it? It points to a method. Jeff Manchester found a single weakness in commercial security and just exploited it again and again.
Exactly. And why the roof? Well, think about it. Most security, your cameras, your sensors, motion detectors, it's all focused on doors and windows, ground level stuff. The roof, usually it's just built to keep the weather out, not people. So you found that path of least resistance and basically perfected it. He became an expert.
It really speaks to a certain kind of, relentless criminal focus. But it's the consistency that's just mind-boggling. Yeah. He didn't really vary his targets, did he? Just McDonald's. Dedicated to the golden arches and those drop ceilings.
But here's a really critical piece of context that our sources highlight. When this specific spree, the McDonald's robberies, started, Manchester wasn't just some guy looking to make a buck. He was already on the run. He'd been caught for something else before, and he'd actually escaped from custody.
Ah, okay. So he was an active escapee. That raises the stakes considerably. He wasn't just looking at new charges for the break-ins. He was facing serious time for the escape itself. He needed money badly, and he needed to vanish
quickly. And that brings us right to maybe the most bizarre part of the whole story. Section 2, the impossible hideout. When you're a wanted man, 45 break-ins under your belt, the logical move is to head for the hills, right? Find somewhere remote. Jeff Manchester, he did the exact opposite.
This is the detail that always gets me. After escaping, the Roofman hid out for months inside a suburban Toys R Us. You really need to let that sink in. Not some cabin in the woods. He was living amongst Ninja Turtles and board games.
And not just hiding in a back room after closing time either. The sources suggest he was actually using the store's own structure, drop ceilings, maybe ventilation spaces, to build a sort of makeshift living space right there, basically in the middle of the retail floor, so he could move around unseen when the store was empty.
So he used the store itself as his base of operations, accessing restrooms, maybe grabbing snacks, and crucially, he had all the time in the world to watch to plan his next move. It's actually quite resourceful in a way, using the sheer anonymity, the sort of everyday background noise of a big box store as perfect camouflage.
Yeah, the contrast is fascinating, isn't it? He's literally surrounded by childhood innocent toys everywhere, but his goal is purely criminal. He's using this place as cover while he figures out how to get enough cash to finally disappear for good, to evade capture permanently. The store was shelter, but it was also his next target.
His technical skill is undeniable, breaking through roofs, living in ductwork. But like you often see in these high-stress situations, I guess the isolation or maybe the proximity to normal life, it starts to wear on him. The need for connection, maybe, starts to outweigh the need for secrecy.
Precisely. And that leads us straight into the emotional core of this, section 3, the fatal attraction. While he's literally living in the ceiling of this huge toy store, he starts, interacting with someone who works right there on the floor below.
He starts dating an employee, Leigh Wainscott. She was a single mother, had 2 girls. So you've got this relationship developing between an escaped fugitive living, above the fluorescent lights, and the woman stocking shelves underneath. The real security flaw wasn't the roof access, was it? It was maybe his own loneliness.
It really makes you wonder about the criminal mindset under that kind of pressure. Was he just that confident he could keep up the deception, that she'd never find out who he really was? Or was he just so desperate for some human connection that he became reckless, ignored the massive risk?
It's the ultimate conflict, really. He's building this deep, supposedly trusting relationship with someone whose entire life revolves around the very place he's squatting in and planning to rob. That relationship, it just has to change the equation for him.
Oh, it absolutely does. He's trying to fund this escape, this plan to vanish forever, but at the same time, he's building this huge emotional anchor right in the middle of his target zone. And that anchor, it ends up sinking him, which brings us right to section 4, $50,000 robbery and betrayal.
So the moment arrives, time to execute the big plan, the robbery. Jeff had a very specific financial target, $50,000. And our sources indicate this money wasn't just for him. It was mostly intended for a friend, Steve, apparently, to help him start a new life somewhere else.
Yeah, that adds another layer, doesn't it? Sort of this warped loyalty. He's about to betray the woman he cares about, rob the place he's living in to help a friend escape. So he finally goes through with robbing the Toys R Us, but he tries one crucial bit of planning first. He needs Leigh out of the picture, out of of the building when it happens.
And this is where the roofman's cunning just collides with, well, basic relationship fails. He specifically lied to Leigh about her work schedule, told her she was supposed to come in later than she actually was. A clear, calculated move to make sure she wouldn't be there during the robbery.
But, work schedules are usually pretty fixed. They're documented. It's not that easy to just change someone's shift time with a work. So, despite the lie, Leigh shows up for her actual shift, her correct shift, and she walks right in on him, committing the robbery. She sees the man she's dating, the fugitive, in the act.
Wow, that's the moment, isn't it? Jeff gets the money, he's all set to leave town, finally disappear. But Leigh, the single mom just trying to work her shift, she's caught him in this ultimate betrayal, not just hiding his past, but actively lying about her own immediate reality, her job.
And what's really striking here is how Leigh reacted. She didn't panic, didn't immediately call the police while he was right there, which could have been dangerous. She actually let him leave with the money. Then she got in touch. She tricked him, convinced him to come back to her apartment, maybe saying they need to talk or say goodbye properly.
She set him up. Jeff Manchester, the guy who could bypass security at dozens of businesses, walked right into a trap, set by the woman he'd lied to in her apartment. A simple domestic setting foils the master burglar who lived in ceiling, all because of a lie about a time clock.
The irony is just huge. The roofman, who could get into 45 McDonald's through the roof, gets caught because he couldn't manage a simple lie about an hourly employee's schedule. His technical skills were immense, but his people skills, maybe not so much.
And that betrayal, orchestrated by Leigh, it sealed his fate. So what did it all cost him in the end? That takes us to section 5, the aftermath and this paradoxical forgiveness.
Well, the consequences were steep, as you'd expect for an escaped convict who'd committed dozens of felonies and then a major robbery. The court gave Jeff a sentence of 40 years, and critically, this was on top of the sentence he already had hanging over him from before his escape.
40 years plus whatever was left. That's basically a life sentence.
Okay.
The real Jeffrey Manchester, based on the records we looked at, isn't even eligible for parole until, I think, 2036. So that relationship, that lie about the schedule, that moment of betrayal, it cost him decades of his freedom.
But here's the twist, the most, human and confusing part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
The detail that makes you rethink the whole narrative. After he was convicted, after Leigh had set the trap that led to that 40-year sentence, she visited him in prison.
She visited him.
And she forgave him for the lies, the deception, for using her essentially as cover while he planned his escape.
Wow, forgiveness. After she was the one who turned him in, knowing it meant decades behind bars.
It's an almost unbelievable act, isn't it? Following such a profound betrayal from him and then her decisive action leading to his capture. He's facing life in prison, she put him there, and yet she offered him forgiveness, personal absolution.
So, stepping back from it all, what's the real takeaway from the Roofman's story? You've got this guy, defined by incredible ingenuity, right? A genius at bypassing physical security. And he's brought down completely by his inability to handle basic human interaction, basic trust.
It's the ultimate contrast. The man who could live undetected for months inside a Toys R Us just couldn't handle the isolation, maybe. Couldn't stop himself from reaching out. He had this chance to completely disappear, start fresh, and he threw it away for a relationship that he immediately poisoned with a lie.
Which leaves a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about after this deep dive is over. What does Leigh's forgiveness actually mean? Jeff needed that $50,000, supposedly for his friend Steve to start over. But for Jeffrey Manchester himself, the cost of trying to get a new life wasn't really measured in dollars, was it? It was measured in the price of lying about 1 hour on a work schedule and the decades of freedom he lost because of it. And yet, somehow, forgiveness still found its way into the end of that story. Makes you think.